everybody, it's Tony George from DocSports.com, joined by my, ex good Doug Upstone today, and we're talking NFL NFL lines for week one. That's right, we're talking some football, and what an exciting TGIF we have here for Tony's time today, as we're going to be enjoying some live sports to bet on this weekend with UFC, which I have dominated my last two cards, and of course, the number one returning handicapper in NASCAR, from 2019, as we're picking back up, not kicking off, the latest version of the NASCAR season at Darlington on Sunday. And of course, Horse Racing Daily, DocSports.com. You saw the little banner up above my head there. That means you get a free $60 if you click the link in the description below and you get in on the action. And what are daily cards over there? $30. It's like a bar tab. There it is right above me. It's like a bar tab. It's cheaper than taking your wife to the movie to get a daily package, but you can get them for free if you've never been a member and get yourself in on some red hot UFC action and of course NASCAR action. And Doug's been tearing it up at the track with the ponies. Doug, an exciting weekend and also an exciting discussion because we're talking about some football today.
Yeah, definitely. And it's good to talk about football. You know, we have some lines out now. The schedule's out. So we got some very interesting things to talk about. And then you mentioned horse racing. We got the Churchill Downs opening up on Saturday. So that's a big deal. That place is, as I like to call the cathedral of horse racing. And with everything, there's no fans in the stands, but it's going to be great to see, the logo. It's going to see the horses and the jockeys on the track at Churchill Downs. It's going to be a really fun weekend for sure.
Yeah, it is. And a little bit of a slow track out there to normalcy for everybody out there living within the confines of the quarantine that is this COVID-19 virus. So we're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. And definitely when you're talking about football, now I've been remiss in my duties, but by design, not to talk about season win totals in the NFL. I know a lot of guys have, and I have no problem with that, but I really wanted to see the schedule. And what some of these teams were facing, and had some time to digest not only what they picked up or lost in free agency, but also impact players that came in the draft a couple of weeks ago. So that being said, I'm ready to make some informed decisions, and we're going to talk about our best bets today on the week one opening NFL lines. However, there happens to be an asterisk involved in today's show. As you know, if you go over to DocSports.com, we have probably the best sports gaming content of anybody in the space. And 95% of the stuff or more that you find at Doc Sports is free. And that includes free play videos, how-to gamble videos, odds, matchup scores, you name it, we have it there, and a ton of articles by some of the best writers in the business and the handicappers. And as I was over there enjoying some of that free content the other day, I read an article about how or why my beloved Kansas City Chiefs, who finally won a Super Bowl. I'm a long-suffering Kansas City Chiefs fan, grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, went to college at Nebraska, 3 hours away from Kansas City. So my entire life, you're a Chiefs and Royals fan. And I don't want to date myself too much, but even back in the NBA days when they shared it with the Omaha Kings in the NBA and Nate Archibald, I hate to date myself, but nonetheless, Doug Upstone pinned an article there about why Kansas City would not repeat. And I thought that I would bring this in before we give you the free picks to have a little back and forth, because Doug, you just from a friendship and political standpoint, I think you probably should have omitted that. I know you write articles for other websites out there as well. You're a much read author, but this one here, I think, was a little bit over the top because in the first paragraph of the article, my name was actually brought up.
Yes. Well, I was thinking, okay, I want to write something because we have the Docs newsletter, and then every once in a while, like to put out some stuff, and so I thought, okay, what could I write about that would be maybe interesting to people? And I have to admit, I have written on this topic before with other people, other teams, about not repeating and stuff like. So I just did it. So I get to the first paragraph, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, Kansas City, Tony George, perfect. Okay, so I just went with it. Now I am offering a little peace offering. I did wear a red shirt today, so just to kind of calm you down. But here's the one thing though, Tony. You know what you got to do? You got to put down the red and yellow Kool-Aid. Okay. It's not going to happen for you this year. It's just not. And the reason that it's not is that when you look at the major sports, so baseball, the NBA, and hockey, in the last since 1998 so that's a total of 66 different teams have won championships. Only 5 have repeated. That's 7.5%. So if you're in the handicapping business and you got a 92.7% chance of being right, I think you go for it.
Well, there's some things that I wanted to at least friendly debate. And by the way, Mrs. George and Mrs. Upstone are also friends, and Mrs. George wanted me to pass along the fact that she hopes that your lovely wife does not share your sentiments here. But nonetheless, in your article, you did mention the fact that Kansas City is the hunted now and not the hunter. You're telling me that Kansas City in 2019 wasn't the hunted? They had the MVP of the league at quarterback who turned around and won the MVP of the Super Bowl here. Everybody was on Kansas City's radar screen last year, and they got everybody's best shot, and they walked away with it with the Vince Lombardi Trophy. That being said, also in your article, and I'm going to give you a couple points here that you can retort. Um, you mentioned that Kansas City's defense was 17th in the league last year and mediocre at best. Well, uh, basically, I'm reading between the lines there. Steve Spagnuolo was a brand new defensive coordinator. It took him a while to get the right personnel in the right places. And bear in mind, the number one defense in the NFL the last 5 weeks of the regular season was the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, they gave up some points in the postseason, no doubt about it. Kansas City can afford to give up 21 points a game because they're going to score close to 30 every game minimum. And the offense has not taken a step back in the offseason, and the defense has taken a step up. And I think if you also bear in mind last year that we lost Patrick Mahomes for 4 weeks, he played at less than 100% for 8 weeks, and somehow they still landed in the Super Bowl. I'm going to ask you a question. Who the hell in the AFC is going to beat them?
Well, you raise all very interesting points, okay, but they're all points of view from that of a Kansas City fan, okay? They're not. Let's just say, I get it, okay? Just like any team that loves their team, they're big fans of their team. But here's the thing, they were still. You can make one thing I will agree with you on the defensive side. As I said, they gave up an above average amount of yardage, but the one thing they did do is they didn't give up a lot of points. So I believe they were 7th in the NFL at 19.3 points for the entire season. Now they gave in the postseason they gave up 75 points in 3 games. That's the second most in the last 30 years of any team. Now their offense was good enough to overcome all that, but I'm looking at this team. You can say they were the hunted, or they were the hunted last year, but they hadn't won anything. They hadn't won anything for 50 years in terms of a Super Bowl. So they were reaching towards the pinnacle. They got to the pinnacle. Now, every team that gets there, you talk to New Orleans Saints, who had a long history. Every team says we're going to do everything exactly the same the following year, except one thing: it doesn't happen. That's the problem. Except with rare exception, it's so difficult to win a championship I think that's where going to fall, whether it be injuries, whether it be some guys that, were dialed in, focused, everything went their way. I mean, even the fourth quarter of the game in the Super Bowl, Tony, you have to admit, those were some pretty unusual things that had to occur in order for the Chiefs to win. Now, they did. I'm the first one to admit that they did. I just think going forward, I think it's going to be a mountain to climb. You know what? And they might even get to the Super Bowl. I might even give you that. They're just not
Yeah.
going to win it.
I'll bet you $500 right now they're in the AFC Championship game. And you know what? They did not take a step back in free agency. A matter of fact, their draft was very good. Picked up the running back from LSU that's going to be an impact player right out of the gate. They got Willie Gay Jr., the linebacker out of Mississippi State. Now, he was in some trouble in college, but this kid is about as talented as they come. And if he had a clean record, so to speak, he probably would have went a lot higher in the draft. They also picked up a tackle, 6'7", 350 pounds, pardon me, to help out with some depth on the offensive line. And these players are seasoned. And one thing I look at from a championship quality when you're looking at teams is being able to face adversity in the mouth and turn around and turn it into opportunity and make it happen. And they did that not only in the Super Bowl, but in both of their playoff games as well, facing double-digit deficits and coming back and winning by double-digit deficits. I'm going to go ahead and ride them for the AFC champion. They're definitely going to be able to beat everybody in their division twice. They might split one of those games, possibly with the Broncos, but you're looking at 6-0 or 5-1 in the AFC West for them again this year, and they are locked and loaded. This, obviously, with a healthy Patrick Mahomes. And since it's my show, I'm not going to give you the last word. That is the last word, because we're going to get right into week one best bets. We're just going to give you a couple of best bets. We'll let you get on your way here on a Friday, folks. Be sure and get over to DocSports.com. Get yourself hooked up this weekend. We got UFC coming at you, 6 and 7 unit plays. In two of the fight cards the last 5 days, I have banged them both and won both those cards. And, of course, NASCAR coming off a #1 season in NASCAR over at Docs last year. And also, Case, my last 3 top plays in the previous races this year before the shutdown of COVID-19. And we are locked and loaded. And be sure and check out the free pick videos this weekend as well, both from Doug and myself this weekend on our respective channels right here at YouTube and on our pages at DocSports.com. But speaking of Kansas City, Houston, Doug, Houston Texans, who I'm trying to figure out how Bill O'Brien is still coaching in the NFL and how, in fact, he's also a general manager. That's kind of a double sword whammy when you actually sit back and think about it. But his team, who blew a 24-point lead against Kansas City in Kansas City's first playoff game after they got over on Buffalo in a miracle at home in their first playoff game last year, they traveled back to Kansas City here, and Kansas City is a 10-point favorite to open up the NFL season on Thursday. Doug, your thoughts on that real quick?
Yeah, I'm on board with you about their coach not being a very good general manager, but I think he is a good coach. I'm not saying he's a great coach, but I think he's a good coach. But everything that I mean, getting outscored 51-7 after you had a 24-point lead, that's going to leave a mark, to borrow from Chris Farley on that one. I think I look at week one. Anytime I'm always tempted to want to take points in week one, because you can think that you might know something, but there's just so many unknowns going into week one. And it might be even more so because we don't know what's going to happen in terms of the preseason. So at this moment, I have absolutely no problem taking 10 points with Houston, because I always when I look at the schedule, I see anything 7 or more, my immediate thought is, okay, I'm going to make the case for the underdog, and that's what I'm going to do here. Never, no matter how we want to look at it, they still scored a ton of points. Houston did last year, and yes, they don't have DeAndre Hopkins back, but their offense is still going to be really good. Now, there is some questions on defense, but I just can't take that. I can't, with Kansas City, I can't take -10. I'll definitely take the points with that game with Houston on that one.
I would agree with you. Kansas City clearly the better team. They've proved it, but you got about 3 or 4 different things at play here. Number one is Kansas City is going to have a great big ceremony and a lot of pomp and circumstance during the week leading up to the game because they're unveiling the championship banner. And just like they do with the NBA champions every year, their first game at home, they get their rings and drop the flag at the top of the arena. Kind of the same thing there with Kansas City. That's a little bit of a distraction. Also, with the COVID-19 pandemic going on, there's a lot of things that are up in the air. OTAs are not happening. Especially you want to take a look at this with a lot of teams with brand new coaching staffs because they're not going to have the same preparation that a normal NFL season would allow them with some of the social distancing rules, travel rules. Like I mentioned, OTAs, this, that, the other, getting rookies into camp for a workout for a week to get them on page, get them to learn the playbooks, kind of develop them into the culture. So you're going to have a lot of that going on. And quite frankly, in week one, laying double digits, I don't care who you're playing. It's just a very, very dangerous. Every sharp in the nation is going to be on any team getting double digits in the opening week of the NFL season, Doug. And one thing that I did look at here for one of my best bets is the fact that the Colts, who opened up at 8.5, now dropped down to 7, are a 7-point road favorite at Jacksonville with a brand new quarterback in Philip Rivers. One thing the Colts are going to do, and they're going to do well, not only did they pick up a great running back in the draft for a nice 1-2 punch. If you haven't been watching Marlon Mack at running back before he got hurt last year, and he wasn't the same when he came back, but at 100% healthy and full strength, he is one of the top 4 running backs in the NFL. Mark my words on that if he stays healthy. Behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL and a damn good play caller in Frank Reich at head coach, co-offensive coordinator. They are going to go down there. They're going to protect Philip Rivers, which is 40, way over the hill, average at best at this point in his career. This is not the same as Tampa Bay getting Tom Brady. Philip Rivers likes to throw it up for grabs. He forces a ball in coverage. His arm is not as strong as it used to be. Does he have some good wide receivers there and good tight ends there for the Colts? You damn right he does. Whether he can utilize that, especially out of the gate on the road against Jacksonville, Doug, who has a very good defense, who has an offense that can also run the ball. And that being stated, both teams are going to want to emphasize the run. They're not going to put it on, Magic Minshew's shoulders first game out of the gate to win him a game, throwing the ball 52 times. And Philip Rivers isn't going to throw the ball 50 times like he did in Los Angeles / San Diego. You're going to see a lot of clock-killing offenses here, which is going to keep the score down, which also brings big points into play. I think anytime I can get a home dog with a capable team like Jacksonville with a good defense against a team with a brand new quarterback here, among the things I mentioned, Doug, I think there's a lot of value in Jacksonville at home.
Yeah, I'm not as big on it as you, but everything that you said, I agree with. I mean, just I like you. I would prefer to get the 8.5 a little bit to get over the key number. But yes,
I did.
Jacksonville is not going to be a good team, but we don't know how good Indianapolis is going to be, and the projections, for example, with Indianapolis are essentially based on what we think they're going to be later in the year, not what they're going to be in week 1.
Yeah, and the two games that we mentioned make a great 2-team 6-point teaser on the dogs there. You're catching you're catching the Texans with some serious payback in mind with J.J. Watt rolling in there with his ears pinned back, wanting to make a statement. I don't know whether they're going to get over on him straight up. I don't think they will, not at Arrowhead. But catching over the fall number of 14 is huge. And, of course, same thing with going over key numbers there with the underdog. A lot of people say it's wiser to tease from 7 down. If they were at home, I probably would. But if they're on the road here, I'll take the home dog plus the 13. Doug, another one that jumped out at me just real quick. Probably the biggest game on the board in week one is going to be Brady versus Breeze. The Buccaneers going on the road in New Orleans. This game's sitting around 4.5 right now in favor of New Orleans. Just a quick thought on that because it's going to be the marquee game of the day.
Yeah, and that one I actually really do like New Orleans Saints here. Tom Brady's coming in. He's going to be in a brand new offense. He's, by all appearance, he's going to get very little practice time to work with this. So I think that puts them at a huge disadvantage. As you mentioned before, no OTAs, organized practices, probably somewhat limited. I think Tampa Bay is going to be behind the 8 ball. New Orleans, their team is set. They're going to be at home. And of course, they're also going to be sick about hearing how good Tampa Bay and Tom Brady are supposed to be this year. At this one, I have no problem taking a team that is going to that like New Orleans, who is a true Super Bowl contender. And even though -4, -4.5, I got the Saints 7 to 10 point winners, not a problem.
Well, we've been seeing a lot of signs here. We're going to finish up with you folks with just a quick thought. We've been seeing all the signs of of Armageddon here in 2020 with the COVID-19. Tornadoes in January down south. We had an earthquake, for crying out loud, in Nevada, like 200 miles away from Vegas last night. I mean, whatever seems to be happening. And I think the seventh seal of Armageddon could be broken here because as I look at the week one schedule, I see the Detroit Lions, Doug, for the second year in a row on opening Sunday are favorites in the NFL. Last year, they were a favorite down in Arizona. I think they got beaten overtime, or they tied in overtime to open up the season. You're down there, but they are a home favorite against the Chicago Bears with the Bears defense at -1. Obviously, the odds makers have absolutely zero faith still in Trubisky here. But just quickly, a quick thought on the Lions being favored at home.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind taking Chicago in this spot. I mean, Trubisky, there's no doubt that, and at this point, I believe the odds as to who is going to be the starter actually favor Foles, Nick Foles, to be the starting quarterback, if I remember correctly. But I still think Chicago's just the better team, and so that's good enough for me, especially their defense, and they know how to play against Matthew Stafford, and Matt Patricia. His job's on the line, and I think the guy's a lousy football coach. He's maybe a great assistant coach, but as a head football coach, he has proven no reason that he should have ever kept his job. I'll take Chicago.
Better defense, getting points in the NFL is always worth a look. And then, of course, the opponent is the Detroit Lions. Still trying to, relive the 1958 season, and we're now in 2020. So then there's that going on. But folks, we appreciate you tuning in. Hope you enjoyed Tony's time here. Get over to DocSports.com. Take advantage of that free $60 we got for you this weekend. We got live sports. We got UFC. We got horse racing. We got Korean baseball, if you like it. And we have NASCAR on Sunday and more discussions on the NFL in the upcoming weeks right here on Tony's Time. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend.